Welcome to Follow the Content Leaders, a podcast where we want to learn how leaders, entrepreneurs, CEOs, coaches, and consultants have built their businesses and exactly what role has content played in their strategies. Good morning, everyone, and welcome back to a new episode of Follow the Content Leaders podcast. Good morning, Rob. Thank you for joining us.
Morning. Hello, everyone.
So today we're joined by Rob Mulden. He's I hope I said that properly.
Yeah,
Your surname? Good. He's the founder of Tune Social, a LinkedIn ad agency, and you used to work at LinkedIn for over 8 years, I think. So we're going to have some interesting questions here today. So thank you for joining us. And how are you feeling today?
yeah, really good. Really good. Thanks for having me.
Sure, my pleasure. I always like to start the episodes with a kind of a random question, and that's like, what's the one thing that you cannot work without? So, what's something that you always have with you when you're working?
Can it be anything? Can it be like a coffee or
Anything that comes to your mind. If that's coffee, that's all right. I
no?
get that.
Coffee for sure. But I think the big one, even though I have an AI note taker,
Mm-hmm.
which has been an unbelievable addition. It's one of the one like so much AI stuff is floating around, and it's a lot of it is good, but it's not great. But I feel the AI
Mm-hmm.
note takers and meeting recaps is the one thing that it's perfectly suited to what the capability AI has right now. So that's been
Mm-hmm.
amazing. But I still, to this day, have a notepad. So everything I used to do when I was doing calls for all the time at LinkedIn was a notepad. So the AI note taker now takes the bulk of all my notes, which is great.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't have to write. But the really important things I will still put down in a notepad. So yeah, just throughout the day, it pages and pages get filled up with different things and a lot of stuff going on. So to have the
Mm-hmm.
notepad there is indispensable.
Yeah. Is it the physical notepad with
Yeah,
your?
physical
Yeah.
notepad. It's actually I every now and then LinkedIn give me one as well, so it's a
It's
LinkedIn branded
corporate.
one.
That's
Yeah,
nice. I have a notepad too, not corporate from LinkedIn, not so fancy, but I also need to have a place where I can write my thoughts down.
yeah, for sure. My next stage of it is I want to get so I get a lot of ideas out in the wild, so I want to get
Mm-hmm.
like a small one, like it's like maybe a quarter of the size just to have in
Yes.
my pocket. Because I don't use notes on my phone as much. I'm more of
Mm-hmm.
a write down person, but yeah, that's my next stage, next level.
Maybe in a couple of months you'll get
Yeah,
there.
yeah.
Good. So tell us a bit about yourself, your journey. How was working on LinkedIn, and what is it that you're doing now?
Yep. So I'm Rob. As you've already mentioned, I have been working on LinkedIn for a long time. So since 2014. So
Mm-hmm.
essentially, I joined LinkedIn when it was in like its very early stages and had only really moved to Europe. It had only been in Europe a couple of years. And initially, I was an intern. So it was in the middle of my degree. And I was lucky enough to get in and do a full year of an internship with LinkedIn when there was lots going on. There was
Mm-hmm.
lots of different processes to be made. They were still building their go to market with some of the different products. But I got in really early at this stage, really early stages of LinkedIn ads. So it was called LinkedIn Marketing Solutions back then. And really, it was like not many people even knew about that LinkedIn had an ads product. People were still kind of
Mm-hmm.
coming around to the fact that LinkedIn itself was a useful tool. So one of my first jobs as an intern was to call up heads of marketing, VPs of marketing, and CMOs, and essentially ask them, you know, like, are you interested in LinkedIn ads for your business? And the majority of the time, some of them would be like, I don't even have a LinkedIn profile, so no, which like some did obviously back then, but a lot of people didn't. And then it was like, it was very much so about recruitment. It was very much so. This is my online
Mm-hmm.
CV. I'm going to put up this CV, and
Yeah.
then every now and then I'm going to get notification from a recruiter saying there's a job for me or whatnot. So I was kind of there for the whole development of the product and the whole development of the feed. So essentially, the feed is now developed into this content sharing platform full of value exchange, full of some stuff that's not great, like every social media platform, but there's still a lot of value from LinkedIn, and that's really exploded in the last couple of years. So I worked there until 2022, and then I'd always had the idea to kind of take things outside and be the agent for LinkedIn, because I felt like a lot of agencies did LinkedIn that I worked with,
Yeah.
and even some LinkedIn ad agencies were doing only LinkedIn, but there was still something a little bit missing, that from the having the insider knowledge to bring that to the outside world was quite a unique use case. So that's what I've been doing for the last year and a half. So I started Tune Social, which is essentially a solely LinkedIn B2B ads agency. We do some consultation strategic work and also some organic, especially when it comes to like launches of startups from stealth and stuff like that. So that's kind of what the basis of it is. But the basis of the business is around LinkedIn ads. So it's LinkedIn ads for B2B startups, scale ups, and multinationals looking to really looking to generate pipeline and revenue from their LinkedIn ads. You know, they want to make LinkedIn ads be kind of like a sales partner, you know, so it's a revenue generating platform. So that's
Yeah.
what I'm at now.
Wonderful. Such an interesting story. I guess it must have been really cool to see like all the process of how the network itself was switching and how you were doing everything in the background, and then also how the audience responded to everything that was being switched, because like what you said is exactly why I opened my LinkedIn account. Was just like, okay, now you need to have your CV here, because that's where recruiters are going to go to look for you, especially me coming from the legal world before and everything. Like, if you didn't have your CV there, recruiters were not going to find you. And how the app kind of switched into this content creation, sharing space, as you mentioned, I guess that switch seen from the inside must have been super interesting, as well as having to call people and explain what LinkedIn was. Like,
Mm,
I think the roles now have kind of inverted quite a bit. So
yeah.
very interesting to listen to. And like, I mean, I have to ask, or I know this is going to be the main question people ask you, but we need to know the answer to. What would you say are the three key elements, let's say, that make a LinkedIn campaign successful for it to work in ads on the app?
Okay. What makes a LinkedIn ads campaign successful? So
Yeah.
I'll give a little bit of context before I go into the three. So for years, because LinkedIn was a new platform, people could get results with LinkedIn ads without doing a whole lot. You know, you could essentially get your targeting right and just get your message. We are this B2B brand who does this. Come and buy from us. And that was like, LinkedIn was such an open space that people were actually getting results from that. And I was working with clients spending a lot of money just doing that type of stuff, and it was working. That has changed. LinkedIn is now a platform where all the B2B brands know that they have to be on LinkedIn in some way, shape, or form. Because of that, there's lots of competition. There's lots of noise in the feed. So there's a lot going on, and you have to stand out first. So the three most important things, number one, without doubt, is to be really clear on your audience and your audience on LinkedIn. So lots of brands and lots of different companies have, and people, you know, have a set ICP. So it may be, you know, it may be marketing managers for a B2B marketing tech company, or for a founder, or for someone who does, you know, personal brand building and stuff like that. It may be founders of organizations, you know, like what you do. So to get that right on LinkedIn is really, really important. There's lots of different data points LinkedIn can give you, you know, in terms of the company someone is from, the company size, the industry, as well as like their title and, you know, the skills they have, and sometimes the skills they want to develop. So making sure you have your audience right is without doubt number one. The second thing that comes into that then, and the second most important without doubt, is creative. So creative it's how you stand out on LinkedIn. You know, it's how you stand out anywhere, and it's how you have kind of a recognizable presence. Before, as I said, you could just put your message out there. you could just be kind of a little bit lazy, I suppose, with creative. And B2B in general has been a little bit lazy in
Yeah.
recent years in terms of creative, but now it's catching up for sure. So
Mm-hmm.
making sure that you have things that stand out in the feed, making sure that you have, video content that's giving things away, really strong branding, but also value exchange within your creative. So it has to be
Mm-hmm.
recognizable, but it also has to be, valuable as well. So that's the second one. And then the third one is generally around the functionality of the LinkedIn tool. So if you have the first two right, you can generally bypass all of the hacks and the functionality and all that type of stuff. If you really are
Mm-hmm.
clear on your audience and you're really clear on your creative, then you don't have to do a lot of hacking with the tool. However, there is one thing that is essential for everyone to have, and that's retargeting. So
Mm-hmm.
essentially, with LinkedIn, if you install the LinkedIn tag on your website, anyone who goes to your website or that has a LinkedIn profile, you can then retarget them with ads on LinkedIn. So
Mm-hmm.
it's the absolute superpower of LinkedIn. It's where with most of my clients, I see most of the results. We spend
Mm-hmm.
a portion of budget towards making sure people know the brand and get to know what the brand is about. But the most of the sales and most of the um, pipeline and stuff like that comes from the retargeting segments. And it can be thinking about you can think about it in the exact same context as your LinkedIn profile.
Mm-hmm.
The people who haven't visited your LinkedIn profile are way less likely to buy than the ones that have visited your LinkedIn
Yeah.
profile. So that's where, as a founder myself, and as I sell on LinkedIn and things like that, most of my sales come from people who visited the LinkedIn profile that I've reached out to, or they reached out to me. With ads, it's the exact same thing, but you just do it through a functionality called retargeting for people who visit
Mm-hmm.
your website or your company page or anything like that.
Yeah. I've seen that. I've been a victim of that
Yeah,
retargeting. Like, it's
victim is the word.
impressive how immediate it is.
Yeah,
Literally, I open the tab, I open platform, not gonna name it. I reopened my LinkedIn. First ad that I get was the platform I just checked, like literally 2 minutes before. I was like, whoa,
yeah.
that's some effective marketing. Yeah.
And it's funny. Just the last thing I'll say on that is it can be done on so many different triggers. So it can be your website. It can be if you visit their company page. If you click to see more on one of their ads, that can then make you fall into a retargeting bucket. Now, I don't recommend people to fully retarget all their audience just from every trigger. Some are better than others. And it can be a little bit invasive if you do click just one small thing and next thing you're seeing the ads forever. So it's not something I recommend, but yeah, there's so many different functionality available for that.
Yeah, it's a very good tool. So definitely super powerful for people using those ads. And then I'm curious to learn a bit more if content has played any part on you building the agency that you have at the moment, if you're publishing content regularly, and how are you creating your own content?
Yeah. So in the last couple of months, I've deprioritized it slightly, but it was number one priority for me when I was starting the agency. So essentially, I went from a place of being in LinkedIn, and my whole network was either the clients I worked with, which was usually a small handful of really advanced clients, or like really high spending clients, who would have really good conversations about LinkedIn with and how to maximize it, or there were people in LinkedIn. So that was the extent of my network. So then when I was starting an agency around LinkedIn, I was kind of looking for a different target market than either of those people, right? I was looking for,
Sure.
brands that were on the way up, brands that were starting to spend and maybe not figuring it out just yet. And that still is my target market. It's companies that maybe have started spending or have tested the water and really don't know what LinkedIn, how to work LinkedIn in their favor. Um, so to reach those people, I needed to gain some authority. To gain some authority, the best way to do it on LinkedIn was through content and basically sharing everything I'd learned while I was at LinkedIn. And I don't share everything. Obviously, there's some things that are too technical and too nuanced to share on LinkedIn. But what I did at the very, very start was to try and write down, just like on a piece of paper, all of the things that came to my mind about LinkedIn. so like what are the things I know that I think other people don't know. And then I just started writing, and the big breakthrough I had was I had like a post which was essentially like the 30 things I've learned about LinkedIn ads in the 7 years I was there. So I think it was over 10,000 hours. It's more than 10,000 hours I've spent on it, but it's like it was a
Yeah.
catchy hook or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And that was kind of really the point where the content started to take off, where I started to notice people starting to follow me and people to visit my profile, all within the target market. So I was writing a little bit for the first couple of months, and it was a little bit kind of just, it was more centered around me, I suppose, which was the wrong approach.
Mm-hmm.
I was talking about, this is what I know, this is what I learned, whatever. And then that was kind of the switch when I was like, these are all the things I know, but I'm writing it for these people.
Mm-hmm.
And then once I started writing with with the people in mind, everything kind of started to change for me. So yeah, that was kind of the big breakthrough. Someone actually copied that post, so that post had like, it went semi viral, and then
Mm-hmm.
someone actually copied the post like a couple of days later. And whatever way the algorithm picked their post up, it like blew mine out of the water, even though it was basically the exact same thing. So that was a bit heartbreaking, but I actually didn't really care because it had brought me in enough business and enough leads to work with and to try build
Mm-hmm.
the business off. So has been a huge part of it for me. And since then, I've kind of tried to reinvent it a little bit. So kind of mid through last year, I was like, video seems to be working really well on LinkedIn. So how can
Mm-hmm.
I translate these things into video? How can I get comfortable speaking on camera?
Mm-hmm.
So I've been kind of starting off with, you know, writing long form posts, trying to break those down now into LinkedIn posts, and then trying to break those snippets into kind of video. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and I've also started a podcast as well, basically to interview people who kind of like the clients I used to have at LinkedIn, people who are really advanced in the stages, who use LinkedIn in unique ways. And I find that's really, really helpful for content as well, because it's on video. It's someone else's perspective. All I have to do is try and prompt them and drag them out of it, drag the
Yeah.
opinion out of them. But it's like your own podcast, you're doing the exact same thing,
Yeah.
but it's really, really useful to use on LinkedIn. So I would say that was a long answer, and the short
Mm-hmm.
answer for
That's
your question
good.
is content has been probably the main pillar of growth for me so far with the agency.
Mm-hmm. Interesting, yeah, and that's exactly the same thing I do with this podcast. So it's exactly the same strategy we're following, but touching a bit in when you started creating content, because from what you said, it looked like you started once you started the agency, not while you were at LinkedIn. Is that
Yeah,
correct?
100%.
Is it something you regret or you wished you'd done differently?
My mindset was completely different at LinkedIn. My mindset was just like, I was only working with a couple of clients, and I was just like, I would share stuff within my own team. Like, these are learnings I've had with this client, and this is how you can apply LinkedIn this way. And I was speaking a lot with the product team. So I was kind of feeding back to people within LinkedIn, and then they were feeding it out to their clients. And that's kind of how it worked. Other people would have good ideas, and I would do the same. I would
Mm-hmm.
idea and share it with my client. So to go outwardly on LinkedIn, it just wasn't something I really had ever thought about. I could see it was starting to become a trend, but I was just like, I didn't really see myself doing it until I had that kind of moment where I was like, now I need to do it. So
Mm-hmm.
I regret it in that, definitely being in LinkedIn, it would have been a platform for me to make things happen much, much quicker if I'd been posting.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't think it would have been of the same quality, because as soon as I started doing it and had I didn't have the day job, I could spend so much time thinking about it. And
Of course.
it takes a lot of time. You help other people with it, and it takes a lot of time to make sure you get it right and to make sure you're speaking in the right way, and to learn the skills of copywriting. So when I had the time as the agency, and when I started and made it a key priority for the growth of the agency, I could invest so much in it, and my perspective was different than being at LinkedIn.
Yeah.
So while yes, I regret not starting at LinkedIn, I think I actually timed it probably right in terms of the tone of voice and the kind of freedom I was able to write with, not being at LinkedIn. was allowed me to kind of rebrand nearly, I suppose, or brand for the first time ever. But in my own head, it was kind of a rebranding away from being internal LinkedIn to this is like LinkedIn outsider,
Yeah.
So I do regret it not building a following, I think probably earlier, but I think the following I've built now is much more in line with where I want to go moving forward. Whereas if I started to do that at LinkedIn, it mightn't have matched, but it's hard to tell. So kind of regret it, but at the same time, it's
Yeah,
worked well.
it all happens with a reason, for a
Yeah,
reason, right? So you're
yeah,
not regret, but if you would have started earlier, probably it had, for sure, you would have a bigger audience. However, it's true what you say in the sense of the insights or the value that you were providing your audience with would have not been the same, because it's not the same when someone that's starting is speaking as when someone that's had 7 years or 8 years of experience at speaking. So kind of very different.
yeah.
And I can see that you have gone into a journey to create the content and learn copywriting and kind of understand how to write a hook and how to create content that speaks to your audience. If you were ever to hire someone to help you with that, what would be the number one quality that you'd be looking on that person to have?
That's a really good question. I think their ability to understand where I'm coming from, so their ability to understand the position I'm in, the tone of voice I have, and the audience it's going to. And if there's that clarity, if that's really the foundation of handing over your copywriting to someone, and if someone is able to clearly, if it clicks with someone what it is you're trying to do, and how you want to achieve it, and they're able to kind of proactively come back and be like, maybe we should try this idea and that idea, and they're good ideas, then that's really all I'd need to have confidence in someone, because obviously it's going to be a learning process where especially in the early stages is going to be, we'll test this and we'll test that, and we'll start to bring some ideas, and you start to work together as a partnership, and it will develop over time for sure. But to have the foundation of, I know where you're coming from, I know who your audience is, and I feel I can make the connection, is for me definitely, it would be the biggest quality.
Yeah, definitely. The connection that you have with the writer is key to then build a trust to and be like, okay, I know you can publish without even my approval, and it will be something that sounds like me and that is aligned with what we want to accomplish.
Yeah, for sure.
Good. So, only last question of the episode. I always like to ask it. It's a bit selfish, but because I love consuming content both online and offline, I'd like for you to share with us any book recommendation, a book that has impacted your life specially, or a book that you would like to share with us.
Oh, that is a good question. God, I'm gonna have to go back through my. Give me a second. I'm just gonna go back
Sure.
through it. So it's the way I consume information is like it's not structured. So I'm not like solely a book person or an audio book person or a podcast person. Go with what I follow. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's
Um,
fine.
I think anything by Dan Ariely is not from a copywriting perspective, but just from, um, from building a business perspective, building an offer perspective, the psychology of how people think about things, and to just give you kind of like, the psychology of decision analytics and things like that is something we completely take for granted until you read a book by Dan Ariely or any of the decision analytics guys around, that it's actually, a science, and it's something that you can influence, and it's something that you can make people's life choices easier for them if you put things in certain ways. So, Dan Ariely, behaviorally irrational, I think is one of his books.
Interesting.
I'll find the name for you, but and
Sure.
I can share it with you. But anything by Dan Ariely, even if you look up some of his YouTube videos and things like that, he's incredibly interesting. And then I
Good.
suppose Thinking Fast and Slow as well is in the same vein. So how I got into these type of people is through my college course, where I had a module on basically behaviorally, two modules, one on behavioral economics and one on decision analytics, and we studied both both professors, but Dan Ariely was the one who stood out for me because he was just very conversational and entertaining in how he delivered his stuff.
Yeah, I'll check those out. I love learning about psychology from a scientific perspective, so I'm sure I'm going to enjoy those.
Yeah, really applicable to marketing and content creation and stuff like that as well.
Good, good. So thank you for your time today. I hope you enjoyed our conversation, and I hope you go on and to have a lovely day.
Thank you very much, Monica. Lovely to chat. Thanks for having me.
Thank you. Bye bye.
Take care. Bye.